Hello and welcome to the 6 Plus show, a podcast for your wargaming and 40k needs. Hobby talk, tactics, tournament reports, lore and much more. We have it all. Please welcome your host for the evening, Tom.
Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and travelling players to the 6 Plus podcast. That's an extra plus. Extra one on there. I am your host, Tom. I'm delighted to be here. I'm very excited to talk about Warhammer. I've actually been doing other stuff for a day and I haven't thought about it, so I'm really up for it. I know it's crazy.
And what have you done with Tom?
I had a whole actual day off, and now I'm back and ready and hungry to talk Warhammer once again. I'm joined here by our dear leader, Chris. Say hello, Chris.
Hello, Chris.
He said hello, Chris. What have you been up to, Chris? Do you want to give us a brief hobby roundup?
Oh, well, what haven't I been up to? No, I've been in a bit of a kind of a situation where I didn't have anything to work on. All the custodies are done. And then, like 3-4 weeks ago, obviously the Harlequins book came out, and that's prompted me to dig up my old Harlequins project from a year or two ago. So I kind of stripped the models, and then I've painted about 20 of the troops so far.
Oh, sweet.
And then I made a cheeky little Facebook marketplace purchase, courtesy of Mr. Jamie here. Got tagged in something at about midnight. I was like, that looks like that's an interesting deal. And it's just basically a bunch of the Star Weavers and Sky Weavers already painted.
Oh, sweet. Nice. And very nice. Very nice.
Also, we're basically in the colours that I'd chosen already, this kind of pink and blue scheme. So it works quite nicely.
Yeah, so the scheme is very nice. We'll have to get some in-progress shots on the Instagram.
So there was then talk of us taking the Harlequins to the team tournament this weekend coming. But
can't go to the team's tournament without them.
Oh, yeah. Well, we are. We are going to be... Well, no, actually, I've actually looked, and there are... I think there's only like 7 or 8 teams with Harlequins there out of the 20.
That means whatever happens, you've got the moral high ground now as well,
exactly.
Which is pretty cool.
I mean, you've got custodians and Tal, but, you know...
Yeah, but they're basically average now, right?
They are B tier.
The plucky underdogs.
Yeah. That's
very exciting.
I got hammered with man flu last week, and then this week we're on Easter holidays, so I've just been doing family stuff with the girlfriend and her son. Nice. So being busy, not had much chance to hobby yet. So I'm hoping over the next few days. Also, we did a bat rep, didn't we?
We did
on Sunday with Paul.
You oversaw that. Yeah, so it was Dark Angels versus Gene Stealer Colts. That was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to seeing the finished product.
So I'm
looking forward to posting a grovelling message on the YouTube apologising for the rules mistakes. I identified a appalling rules mistake I've been making all game. As soon as I got home, I reread the strat. I was like, shit.
I woke up and I just saw this message.
I've definitely used that at least twice, possibly 3 times. That is appalling, but there we go. You live and you learn. You live and you learn, kids. Just terrible, but wonderful game. I'd not played Paul before. It was a cracking game, really enjoyable game. So, looking forward to seeing how that comes out.
We tried some new things, didn't we? So
yeah, we did. Tempest cards. They're fun. Good time.
Yeah. But that's me, yeah. I'll be doing more painting and editing over the next week or 2 because I'm on Easter holidays. So, yeah, that's me.
Very exciting. Nice. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the various characters for the Harlequins because they're always a really nice way to show some personality. Right, well, also here today we have Jamie. Say hello, Jamie.
Hello, Jamie.
Wonderful. Very nice to have you here. Do you want to give us a little roundup? What's been happening with you?
Yeah, so haven't really managed to get much hobbying done or gaming really since the last team tournament we went to. Paul very kindly ran his Harlequins at me.
That's nice. He's a good guy.
It's nice
ran his Drukhari as Harlequins. And
that's
how
hilarious.
Scary that is.
Proxy Quins.
Yeah. Best way. So yeah, hobby-wise, just been finishing up a couple of squads on my Blood Angels. Really enjoying painting those up.
Nice.
Finished my Sangare Guard, Sangare Priest, and now moving on to my Death Company. Got a couple of squads of those. So yeah,
very cool.
Finished, and then also
you've been using like Streaking Grime, haven't you, for the Blood Angels?
Yeah, gone for Grim Dark Look. It's Yeah, it's a bit scary when you first put it on.
I was when I first saw it, I was like, "What the hell is going on?" And then actually, once it's all been taken off, the effect is amazing, right?
Yeah, I was super worried because the Sanguinary Priest I painted up, I actually really liked the way he looked, and I was like, do I really want to just throw Streak and Grime all over this? So, but yeah, no, happy with how it turned out, so that's pretty cool.
No, they're looking really cool.
Also, we're all going to get started on some Age of Sigmar. So
yes,
I had a couple of dragons painted up since maybe January, and they've been riderless ever since. This week I finally painted up the 2 riders to get those stuck on, and just to get the whole thing started.
They are very cool. Green dragons is the right way to go, by the way. Good choice. That's the true colour of any dragon. Yeah, historically accurate.
Yeah.
But your Stormcast scheme is also very nice.
Yeah.
Age of Sigmar is going to be really fun.
Yeah, definitely. I was having a look today about whether to go pure Stormcast or Cities of Sigmar, so I can just go a bit everywhere really with it, like the old Wood Elves and
retro.
Yeah, some Sylvaneth as well, because I like the old Treebeard style guys. So I might end up going for a Cities of Sigmar just for a bit of everything. It keeps the painting fresh as well. So rather than just paint once again, over and over again. So,
they have the advantage of having like all those old like Empire models, which is really fun. Like there's so many different classics in that range, and lots of stuff you can do. Yeah, very nice. So I've been doing the same as you in my hobby time earlier in the week. I've been doing Soul Black Gravelords. And it's funny, I was thinking about sort of how I was going to do Age of Sigmar in general, and I think I've basically decided that I'll do Death, and Death will be my thing, and I won't do anything else. And that's how I'll sort of learn the game. Because that way I can, like yourself, if I want to bolt in some Flesh Eater Courts or some Nighthorn or whatever else, then I can do it that way as well. But yeah, the models are just amazing. They are better models, I think. I think the Age of Sigmar models are definitely better models. The game itself, jury's out, we'll see. We'll find out. But
I think High Fantasy gives them a bit more creative freedom, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think you're right.
The big monsters as well is a very very much a limit on what you can do with the big models. I think in 40k, big tanks and big walkers, that's about it. But the dynamic poses of the dragons and light is just incredible, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Less likely to be stuck out just from behind a ruin and get yourself killed as well, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean
I've not played it. Maybe that is how it works, but I hope it isn't.
It will be with my 80 archers.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. the Lumineth. I'm looking forward to seeing the Lumineth though. Those models are also really, really nice.
Yeah, I enjoyed painting the ones I've done so far.
Yeah, and we're all off to the teams event. Got a 6++ teams going, and I am also once again a travelling player, if you will. So I will be plugging in,
nice.
And we'll be feeding back on that. I would assume the week after at some stage, and doing a debrief of how we all get on. Wonderful, right? Well, we're going to launch into today's topic. It has 2 titles. The sensible title is "Take the Next Steps to Develop as a Player," and the alternative title, which I'm championing, is "Ruminations on Stagnation for the Nation."
Yep.
And seconded.
You, the listener, can decide which you want to run with.
When you're telling everyone,
we're a democracy. We're a democracy. You can choose. Don't feel obliged to use one or the other. But anyway, what we've been thinking about it. We've been thinking, and the general emphasis of the episode is to talk through some ideas about what to do if you're someone who wants to be improving, wants to be upping your game in 40k and improving as a player, but you feel like you've kind of stagnated or hit a plateau in your performance. Right? If you've hit a level from which you're not really rising or not really pushing up beyond. And Chris, I mean, it was interesting. I wanted to kind of pick your brains because you said this was something that you feel you yourself have been dealing with in recent times. So do you want to talk us through that briefly before we dive into it?
Yeah, I think this episode kind of came about because it would have been like a month or so ago. I was just a bit frustrated. I think it was actually when I was just taking the 1,000 Suns, and I hadn't had the best.
Which of course had so much to do with how good you were as a player, right? That was so reflective of your player level. That
easiest pick up and play army there.
Yeah, famously.
No, it was the final game where I made this just ridiculous mistake with the charging and Overwatch, and I just found that really frustrating. And I feel overall, also we'd had the team tournament and I'd gone 3-2 with the Custodies there, and I feel like I've hit a level where I know all the stuff, I can talk to you and explain to you all the tricks of the trade and how to try and get the most out of the rules and all those sorts of things. I know most of the armies. I know what they're going to do. I kind of know how my matchups are going to go. But I still don't quite see the game like kind of holistically. And there are moments where I'm like, oh, I got that right. I really did get that right. And I played a good game there. And there are other times where I get to like turn 2 and I'm like, oh, I've really messed this up. I just haven't thought this through. And I've put these things in the wrong place and those sorts of things. And the consistency isn't quite there. So I thought it'd be quite a nice topic. Not necessarily the fact that we've cracked it and we know how to become better. And we're all now after this episode and our musings, we're now going to be challenging for the top. But I think it was nice just to get those thought processes going and share some ideas that we've had about how you can kind of move on when you have hit that particular stagnation level. Really,
yeah. I think it's something that a lot of people, at the very least, say they really want to do. Right? I think there's a tendency towards improvement in the hobby, and there's a tendency towards trying to get better at all aspects of it, whether it's the painting and the sort of the hobby side or the playing and or at events. And so I guess we're not pitching this specifically at event goers, but obviously a lot of the people we know and a lot of people we engage with are event goers. So I think there's a lot of stuff here that is useful for that. But so how we're going to structure this is we're going to think about things you can do before you even step into a game or into an event to sort of sharpen up and improve your play. Things that you as a person can go away and do and how you can approach that. Then we're going to think about actually during competitive sort of events or sessions or moments, how you can continue to improve and what little things you can do to keep sort of sharpening up. Finally, we'll think about what sorts of things can be useful to do after the fact, right? After the dust has settled, after the battle's over, when you're sort of thinking through your next steps and thinking over your performance. And I'm going to sort of throw it out to you guys, and then we'll sort of riff on anything that you guys come up with. So I think what we'll do is we'll start with sort of tips and tricks for kind of sharpening up prior to events, prior to competitive games. And I guess we'll take this over to you first, Jamie. Have you got any wisdom to offer us here on how you approach this?
No, cool.
Wisdom's a strong word. Pick up the Harlequins Codex.
Yeah, I was going to say play Harlequins, but we'll just put that out there now.
Yeah.
If you want to see an uppage in your numbers, go nuts. Just go nuts.
So yeah, I think a big part is splitting both practice and absorbing info.
Good.
Me personally, I like to listen to podcasts on the way to and from work. I mean, it's a 45-minute drive, and rather than listening to Miley Cyrus' greatest hits, I think a lot of the podcasts are great information just to absorb. You don't need to sort of pay attention to every word they're saying, but just to listen to higher ranking players just talk about the game, just to hear the way they see it. You know, just another point of view, someone who's more experienced than I, just to hear him talk and various bits and bobs. So the one thing I like is podcasts that focus on new releases, so reviews. I like Art of War Down Under by Adam Camilleri. There's various other ones, but it's a very expensive hobby, as you both know, and there's no way we can afford to grab every codex and every supplement that's released to digest that information yourself. So just to have that sort of 45 minutes to an hour every 2 or 3 weeks when a new codex is released, just to hear someone else talk through it. He very often has a specialist in the faction on to talk through it with him. So just to learn the tricks that the army can get put on the table, any potential gotchas that might catch you out, that, you know, next time you're on the table and you're facing them, you think, oh, hang on a minute, I heard that, and it's just something to bear in mind. So yeah, I think that's the information absorption that I think is a key part, is just hearing stuff about the codex. You know, you read online that everything's overpowered and this is great and that's great, but to know what they're doing on, you know, how do they move, how are they shooting, what ranges are they needing, what psychic powers they're getting, what buffs they're getting in the command phase, just things like that you don't read online from the various whiners and the like that are just hating on a faction for the sake of some win percentages or anything, but to listen to how an army works rather than just they're winning everything, they're too good. Just to try and hear how you can tackle it rather than just you don't stand the chance, give up now sort of thing. So yeah, and then
I think that's excellent. Yeah. Another point. We're getting more wisdom.
Well, next thing is just practice-wise. You hear in everything in life that practice makes perfect, but I think not all practice makes perfect. I think you need to focus on what your practice is. If you've got the same two people banging heads with the same two armies all the time, I don't think that's really going to improve you.
No.
I think before an event, I think if you can try and get some matchups into meta lists or lists that yours potentially struggles into. So I played Grey Knights before with a lot of damage to weaponry. So I was trying to get some practice into Death Guard and the like, that all their -1 damage is just neuters your damage output horrendously. So trying to figure out how I can play into those armies that are sort of a buffer to mine. My obviously playing Town now that rely heavily on rerolls. Two of the biggest armies right now, turning those off, being Custodians and Harlequins, are fortunately two of the armies. Well, I'll say fortunately, potentially fortunately, I've had practice matchups into before this team event. So if you can practice into armies that you would know you're going to struggle into, it may help you. Just when it comes to it on the tabletop, or how I know obviously on the previous team tournament we were worried about how many points you can get. So if that can limit the deficit in points you get in a match, then all the better. I know obviously this one's a bit different, how matchups are going, but
But in general, working on that deficit is always going to be useful, right? You want to be even tough games. If you're pushing towards getting closer results, that's nice.
Yeah, if you can get the score close, and then obviously if you manage to get the turn 3, hold more on a primary, it might flip the game over to a win. So if you can spend the whole game limiting that differential, I think is important.
Definitely. Excellent. Well, Chris, how about you? What sorts of things do you think you can do in the sort of the run up to competing?
So I also split my kind of pre-tournament thing into the two categories of preparation in terms of practice and then also content. So as Jamie says, it's not about practice makes perfect, it's perfect practice makes perfect. You want to be practicing things you want to be doing on the tabletop. So I think it's really important when you go into a game with a friend is identify what you want the outcome to be. Are you playing a no-holds-barred tournament match? Or are you actually trying to, is it a friendly game? Or are you trying to learn and develop from it? So things that I've done in the past are, rather than playing a full 5-turn game, when I went to visit Lee, we did two-turn matches just to practice, kind of like the start of the game, which, let's face it, is quite often the most important part. And that's therefore why we've all had those games where you play till you carry on playing even though the result is in the bag. And sure, sometimes you want to practice dragging it out and that sort of thing, and getting as high a score as you can. But I think a lot of the time, actually, it makes much more sense to just start again, re-rack. The Art of War, when they do their coaching games, they work out the point where the game was lost, and they just go back. They change the play, and they go again, which is obviously better for the viewers. But that's how you're going to learn from the game. Like,
of course,
I remember years ago we did like a little league with some of us, and I played into Kieran's Death Guard, and he had like a load of dreadnoughts and stuff. And I decided to unleash the lions turn 1. And as soon as I did that and we played out my first turn, I realised I'd lost. And because it was a league game, we kind of played on. But all that happened was I stewed for the next 2 hours as I was like, well, I've just lost this game. What's the point? I'm not playing for anything.
Can I ask why that cost you the game? Because I'm quite interested in the learning experience.
So for those who don't know, Unleash the Lions is where the list was based around a big blob of bikes and a big blob of Terminators. And turn 1, I had all the Terminators on the board. I unleashed the Lions, so it became, I think it was 6 or 7 individual units. The problem was he had all of these powerful like Leviathan dreadnoughts and bloat drones and that, which could. So a Leviathan dreadnought, for example, could put one arm into one Alaris, one arm into the other, and very reliably kill it. I couldn't stack any of my buffs onto them. And the idea was, I'd go around and score engage and all that sort of thing. But actually what happened was I just got they all died immediately. Stuff like, I can auto-explode my fitted bloat drone and do D3 mortal wounds to all of your Terminators. Because
and then it's on each individual guy.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. I'll bear that one in mind, though. That's great.
Yeah, you charge like 4 Terminators into a bloat drone where you're only hitting with one and then he's interrupting.
Yeah.
And it was just like, in hindsight, but that was one of those things where I've been like, right, well, this is the list. This is how the list plays. Do it. And actually, in that particular game, it didn't work at all. So
that's really interesting, though. That's an interesting example. Because that's one of those things that people will say with Custodes you should do, right? And I guess in that game, what you've learned is it's situational, and you don't always want it. Yeah, exactly. 100%. Yeah.
I think generally, making those small adjustments and going back and seeing how it affects the game, I think that's really interesting. And I think the important thing is that you're both on the same page. Like, talk it through with your opponent. Like, because I know when I'm playing and my opponent's saying what they want to do out loud, I'm like, oh, please don't do that. Please don't do that. I know what I don't want them to do. Well, if you're having a friendly game, ask them, what do you think what stuff do you not want me to target? Like, do you want me to be like? What would you like me to be hiding away or being aggressive with? Like, find out just from I've played into Tau a lot of times now, but I still don't know exactly what that Tau player is thinking, and I think it's really interesting to know what are their main concerns, because you see things very differently when you're playing. Yeah. I'll be like, I'm really worried, and Jamie will be like, no, mate, you're fine. And it's just
me being a pessimist.
Yeah, exactly. We always are. When you're losing, it's it's amazing how clearly you see the game compared to when you're winning.
I think another thing on that perfect practice is also spiking of rolls. Like, if we're having a practice match and we want to see how two lists run into each other, say I've hit your bikes and wounded 6 times with 3 damaged plasma shots, and you fail all of your 4-up saves, and suddenly that bike squad's gone. I don't think that's really beneficial to a practice match.
Game changing,
yeah. So instead of having 1.5 bikes left, you've now got nothing. It's so I just don't think that's it's helpful for any of us, because now I'm artificially thinking, that squad can easily wipe those bikes out, and you're thinking, crap, I've got nothing. There's no point in me carrying on. Whereas 1.5 bikes can do a lot of damage to a Tau gun line. So I think a lot of that,
a swing moment like that might be a sensible re-rack kind of moment.
I mean, not everything, but if you've failed 6 out of 6 4-ups, you think, well, no, just pass 3 of them, we'll carry on, and as if you'd rolled averages. I think sometimes like that, it makes sense. Just say, you know what, we'll go with the averages and we'll carry on from there. And just to give both players a better idea.
I think it boils down to like kind of not being afraid to lose the game. I think I've mentioned it before. When I played Kieran's Orcs, and I just threw my Custodes at him, and it was a bit of an embarrassing destruction. But I learned a lot in that game. I learned what sort of damage they can output. And I think especially when you're playing one of the top armies, I can already think with my Harlequins, I'm like, imagine when I start learning my Harlequins, what happens if I play them and I lose all the time with my friends? Like, it's going to be really embarrassing. You kind of have to leave the pride at the door. You have to think about, what's the goal here? And you've got to both be, your friends, you're trying to work together. And I think those are the sorts of things you want to talk about. Jamie kind of covered the embracing the content stuff out there. But one more thing I would add is, in terms of event packs, over here we have the Warhammer tournaments who are putting on like a major a month. Same terrain, same mission. If you're serious about doing better, get that terrain out on your board and deploy your army in each of the matches. It's amazing how... I've had a few games where I've recently practiced that mission or that board beforehand. It's amazing the amount of confidence that gives you. You're like, okay, well, I've got a game plan here. I know where I'm moving. I know what I'm going to do. I remember you mentioning at the weekend about Don Maidlow, who'd gone onto the board on TTS and lined up where everything...
So he literally mapped it out. He was mapping out a non-Eldritch Storm area of the board, right? In case he went second. which is remarkable dedication. And so that's the level of preparation that very, very top players make. Yeah, absolutely.
You don't.
So that's how far up you can get, right? And you can be that meticulous.
So yeah, that's me for beforehand.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. So I'll add a couple. I think know what your own limitations are before you start is useful. Do you have rules on what you take? Because those might set you back, right? If I want to run this faction and it's struggling, that's going to limit certain things, and that's going to get certain games feel certain ways. If you want to run certain types of units because they're fun or because they're fluffy, whatever else, that's going to put certain kind of constraints on outcomes. And so having an honest assessment of what those are, so you know what you can realistically expect, I think is useful. I think the other thing is to start building realistic data on yourself, because this is quite a new thing that I think is actually quite interesting, because with things like ITC battles, that you guys have both talked, I think, quite eloquently about how soaking up theory and ideas and from other players is very useful through content. But the other thing you can do more than ever, I think, is have a very clear sense of your own numbers, in quite an interesting way. So you can, if you record every game and log every game that you're playing, you begin to build a picture of how you do into certain types of matchup, B, how you do with certain types of army. I think that's really useful as well, having a sense of that. And you also are able to look at your scoring across a game and go back to games and look at where you've scored well and where you've struggled with particular secondaries, with particular choices, whether it's the primary that's hurting you, everything else. And I think that's something that if you want to improve, being able to collate and use that, I think, is quite useful. We've talked about understanding your army as well as you can, understanding other people's armies, and I think soaking up content and ideas is really useful for that. I think the point you made about winning is a really good one, because as you've alluded to, winning isn't learning as such. Mm-hmm. And if you are having games regularly where you're just smashing your opponent, or you've got a local matchup where you may have a local matchup, a local player you really like playing, and you guys play all the time, but it's not close. It's not the game isn't particularly close. Then making that harder, I think, can be beneficial for you as a player. If you're like, well, okay, whenever I take that, it's just a massacre. I'll then take something that puts you in a harder position, because then you're going to be putting yourself in more difficult positions in the game as well. It's interesting. The re-racking thing, I think, is really useful. I think playing all game states at least a few times with your army is also useful, though, right? I think that's
like chess,
one thing.
Isn't it?
It is a bit like chess, yeah. Because that's it. Because I certainly have friends locally where if the game's gone, they would, or they perceive it to be gone, then they just stop. And it can be a case of, well, you're not going to know how to scrap for those 8-10 points at the end of a game, which is such an important thing to be able to do if you don't ever try that. And you may well be in a game subsequently where you haven't got that experience, and being able to chase a game and sort of scrap for points later on is a useful practice to have. But as you say, it's a case of working out and being a judge of when it's relevant and when it's not. If it's a landslide and there's nothing to be had, or if it's a tabling, then there's not going to be that. You're not going to have that, right? That's not going to happen. So there's definitely states where it's beyond that kind of that recovery. But I think practicing in all sorts of game states, well, let's say, and that can be an interesting one as well. Kind of in a matchup where it's like, going first, this is relatively straightforward for me. Going second, it isn't, or vice versa. Then practice putting yourself in the opposite situation, in the more difficult situation. I think can be quite useful as well.
I watched a game on War Room where Lennon was practicing his Harlequins Adepticon list, and basically told Siegler to build a Tau list that was going to be horrendous for him. And he kind of thought about what's the worst case scenario. Me going second, right? I want you to go second. Yeah, so he was really stress testing his list.
Yeah, stress testing, I think, is a really good point. And I think that's seeking out difficult situations, difficult matchups, difficult game states is really beneficial. It's not always pleasant. It can be quite, because you kind of have to leave ego to one side, don't you? You have to kind of put down that sense of, I win all my games, and therefore that makes me a good player. It's like, well, we have quite a lot of say in what games we end up playing. So if you're just curating a world of easier games for yourself, that's saying very little about you as a player. And as for things we've already discussed in previous episodes, win rates alone don't tell you a lot about people anyway, because there's so many other factors and variables involved. But yeah, I think regarding yourself as always wanting to learn other armies and also learn how other people see the game and understand the game, I think that's really good, and I think that's definitely how a greater amount of open-mindedness towards the game comes from. And that's, if you have people that you play against and you just hear them talking about the game and it's like, wow, I'm learning a lot, then those are the people you want to play. I know we shout him out every week on this podcast, but Stuart, our local Death Guard player, just has a sort of chest brain for games, and he's just one of these people that when you're talking to him about the game, you're just seeing this whole other version of it laid out, and so that's a really beneficial opponent to have, right? Whereas
Chris had that.
Oh, sorry, Jamie, you go. Yeah.
I think me and you, Chris, had that when we played the doubles event, is that just having someone next to you, who we probably see the game very similar anyway, is that just someone else's opinion is like, didn't think of that. And, just one comment makes you just see the board state a completely different way. And it's like,
that's really interesting.
Doubles tournaments.
So I just think playing different styles of games as well, like the teams, the doubles, the singles, will broaden your horizons no end, because just having someone's definitely is talking is when there's someone else standing next to you goes, I thought that, and you're like, I didn't even see that, and next time when you go into that match you'll think, well, no, last time that worked, so we'll go with that.
Definitely
difference.
Really
sorry,
nice.
Tom, anyway.
No, it's a really interesting example, actually. I think having someone else eyeballing your decisions is something we actually don't get to do a lot if it's always you versus someone else and no one's giving that up, right? So actually having someone look at the board from your side and offer their thoughts is quite helpful. So actually doubles is quite a nice way into doing that, perhaps.
We've spoken about two things. We've spoken about math hammering a game out. Yeah, we spoke about it at the weekend, like just bang average dice. What happened?
bang
I think
average
that would be an interesting thing to do.
Yeah,
but also playing. I haven't done it. Literally just thought this, but playing a game against your opponent, but playing the game together. So trying to play like the most perfect game of Warhammer you can. Be like, well, I'm going to do this, and then if your opponent would be like, I would just do this. Okay, right, and then coming together to work out what you think the best way of playing each turn is, and then seeing who triumphs. I think that would be interesting, because then you're kind of playing both sides. I had it when I was Jamie, I was trying to help him out with his sisters in preparation for the team tournament. And I just come off doing, I think, Beachhead Brawl. I was feeling like quite confident with the list, and I was kind of like trying to talk him through how to be super defensive. We kind of played his army a bit together to an extent. And because I was then able to tell him the things that I didn't want him to do, etc. And I think it was beneficial. So I think those sorts of things, if you can both get on board, it will also really help you to learn your opponent's army. If you're having to find out what can he do and that sort of thing.
Because I think knowing where the vulnerabilities are is a huge part of turning an army from something you're a bit scared of into something you can deal with, right? I think for me this year, this particular season, the bogeyman for me is Thousand Suns, because it took me so many goes before I actually. So it was something like Drakari, which actually played badly, doesn't like Thousand Suns very much because of the mortals and the fragile, expensive stuff with not many wounds. That's one of those ones where eventually you start seeing, they don't want to come here. It'll take them forever to get here. They they only have so much stuff, and so you start being able to build kind of game plans that run counter to how they want to function, and you start knowing the ins and outs of what the army's limits are. But that's always the way, isn't it? Where it takes a few goes to start seeing an army as the person playing it is seeing it and working out where those weak spots are, so it becomes a bit less intimidating. Right, okay. Well, let's move on to whilst competing. What are the things you can do to help yourself develop during the very act and process of competing itself, be that in a horrible league match with someone who's very scary, or at a competitive event, or whatever else? During the game itself, what can you do to continue to develop as a player? Let's start with you, Chris, because Jamie went first last time.
Cool. So questions. You need to ask your opponent some questions.
Yes, you do. Yes.
There are obviously an infinite number of questions you can ask them. Maybe it'd be good to do a show sometime on purely just what to ask your opponent.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
I think generally what you want to be able to identify is know what your army's weaknesses are and what have they got that counters that. So, for example, if you are playing Tau, you don't really need to ask, do you have a fight last? Because that's probably not going to be such a concern for you.
No, probably not.
But knowing the basics, the stuff like, do you have advance and charge? Do you have any way of improving your charge distance? Find out what the big scary units are, those sorts of things. But you need to ask the questions. The worst thing you can do is have your opponent just tell you all the shooting profiles of all of the guns, because I can guarantee it, you are not going to remember any of that. I mean, a case in point was when AdMech had just come out and I played into Sisters. He told me, amongst various other pieces of information, that Celestine had a 6-inch heroic. But he told me a load of other stuff. And turn one, I went and flew my planes across the board to get engaged and was within 6 inches of Celestine, who immediately chopped up a plane. And I just got overwhelmed with information. So knowing the individual gun profiles and those sorts of things, it's really not going to matter at the end of the day. You just need to think about your army and how they're going to affect. Keep asking as the game goes on. I just constantly ask questions over and over as the game goes. Each time I do something, right, is there any way of you doing this or that? A question I ask more and more these days is, can this unit heroically intervene?
Intervention is one of the killer things. Intervention and interruption and fight last are so big. So
just knowing those,
game flipping.
I think knowing those is really important. So you've got to get the questions up. Then in terms of other things, it's a bit of a bugbear of mine when people are playing and then I look across at their scoreboards and they don't know what the score is. And they're like, I'm like, what turn is it? 3. Well, what's the score? Don't know. They're just ticking it off on the sheet of paper.
Paul.
Like, well, how are you understanding? How are you understanding what you need to do, whether you're ahead or behind, whether you need to play defensively or attacking? Like, information is power, right? You need to have as much information as possible. So that's why I will put, if my opponent's gone to the last, they're getting that 15 points straight away.
Always.
And I think that is so important. ITC Battles app helps that a lot. But I mean, I personally would find it very frustrating to not know what the score was when I'm playing. And I think you can link to that, trying to actually track what your prediction of the game is. Now, I'm not at that level yet. That is one thing. Every tournament I go to, I'm like, right, I need to start doing it. And then I just get caught up with playing because inevitably I'm using some new army or slightly different army that I'm having to focus that on. That's probably a different point, is stop changing armies. But I think just if you can get to that point, I mean, you could do the simple stuff like think about your primary. Just try and focus on the primary. Like at most missions, they're probably going to be scoring 8 each turn on their primary. Realistically, you're not going to knock them off too. Sure, some you're going to be able to. But have that stored up ahead, right? Well, we're both going to probably going to score about 40. So what secondary do I need to tackle to try and even this, or get the edge and that sort of thing? Or what one can I take out? Just trying to have that idea of the game. And then so 2 more things in terms of the game. Measuring, you don't measure enough. That's a fact. Everyone, you don't measure enough in the game. Measure out your turn. Plan where you're going to go. Whenever I've played the really top players, generally the movement phase is preceded by I'm going to measure all the distances. Where are you going to be able to go? And it's not eyeballing it. I do this. I go, right, you can go how far? 8. That's roughly there. You might be able to see around there. Probably not. I don't know. I don't actually find out. And then when I'm getting shot at by this thing that I thought I might not get shot at, it's quite frustrating. It's the same with the deployment. I'm like, I'll just hide behind here because I'm safe. And then you suddenly see them lining it up, and you're like, oh no, I'm not safe at all. So just thinking about that. And then linked to that is having a cohesive plan in your deployment phase, thinking about what you're going to do with all of your units when you get to move. I had a classic thing at Beachhead Brawl, second game I played against Vic VJ, came like second with his Tau. And I had the -1 to banner. And I deployed everything as much as I could behind this ruin. But I had my Vexilla on one side and my bikes on the other. And basically all my bikes scooted off down one side and my Vexilla had no chance of catching up. So kind of just hovered on the right side and gave -1 to hit to a single dreadnought that he was never going to shoot at in the first place. Because I hadn't at all planned out where I was going to go. I just kind of I'll see what happens. I'm roughly in the right place, and I wasn't at all. So don't just drop with impunity. Make sure you have a plan with your deployment. Would be a thing that I think a lot of people maybe you see the terrain, you're like, okay, I'll put this here, and this here, and you don't actually think, well, what am I doing with the things in these places? So just try and, even if it's something as simple as, this is my shooting units, this is my Sagittarium. Let's make sure Trajan or my shield captain's there so that I'm getting some reroll ones from my shooting units. It's just like little things like that. But
they're nice.
Just some things you can think about during the game.
The measurement one seems particularly relevant. Having just had the game with Paul. Paul has a +1 to charge banner. And that just, what I realised was I have a very good sort of knack for just basic charges, but in a game where there's that +1 everywhere, I was just getting it just wrong every time. I was just not quite far enough away all the time. Like there was so many moments where that banner meant what I thought was a safe distance wasn't a safe distance. And so it's an interesting thing how little things like that can really mess with your, and you need to be really, really precise, really forensic to make sure those things don't sort of bite you. Jamie, let's talk through some in-game improvement and developmental wisdoms from yourself.
Yeah, so just going back on that measurement thing, I saw a game between Nick Nanavati and Richard Siegler, where
they're both fine, both perfectly fine
average players. Siegler playing Tau with some deep strike heavy farsight enclaves, and Nick Nanavati running his GSC. And
yes,
like a legend. I'm not sure if you've seen it, Chris, where he measures out the GSC deep strikes to perfectly screen out the entire board. So Siegler's unable to bring in his reserves, and he's left with 3 squads on the table. And that pre-movement phase there, where he's screening out, dicing out everywhere that's 9 inches away from anything, probably took about 25 minutes, half an hour. But essentially would win you the game, because he's then got 2 squads of 5 crisis suits that he's never bringing on the table, and it just counts as destroyed, just because you spent that extra 15-20 minutes thinking, hang on a minute, I might be able to screen this out, so he can't even bring them on, and they're just a non-point. So you may not think, he doesn't want me to spend 20 minutes on my moon phase, I want this to be fun for both guys. It's like, but hang on a minute, this could make the difference between winning and losing. And I think some people might get a bit worried, look, hang on a minute, I don't want to be that guy that's, just trying to slow play him. I was like, well, I mean, even if you're on a clock, that extra half hour in that movement phase might make the difference between a win or a loss. Your next three turns might only be 10 minutes because he's only got a couple of spots left. So
you've got nothing.
With deep striking, I think always put the time in, right? Always put the time in. Yeah. It can be massive.
Yeah, and also going back to the questions, the pre-game questions you ask your opponent, I think more so than just does this guy advance and charge? How far does these move? What's their? I think asking the questions in the right manner. Now, the one thing I could think of is the current codex of Gene Stealer, the Tyrannus for the Gene Stealers, is that yes, they can advance and charge, but I think the question you need to ask is what's their maximum threat range? Because yes, they can advance and charge, but that threat range isn't there at 20 inches, because he can also move again with the Swarm Lord. He's now moving another 12 inches. And you think, no. So what's the absolute maximum threat range? Because he might not be purposely withholding information. He just might not be thinking of everything at that time when you ask him. It's they can advance and charge. But it's like, have you got any other rules that, what is their absolute maximum threat range? Because
threat range is a good one to take in, I think.
Yeah, I think
that's more comprehensive, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's just trying to word your questions right where you're missing out any potential loopholes. You might have a an opponent that doesn't want to tell you all the information, or you might just get some that just might not be thinking of everything at the time because they've also got to plan their first turn, their deployment. So I think trying to make things as easy for them as possible, saying, look, I know he's got some funky rule where he can move again. What's their maximum threat range, just so I can stay outside of that? Just try to help each other. Try to make things as easy as possible, asking the right questions rather than as many questions as you can.
Definitely. I think with the questions thing, once you're asking good questions, this whole sort of cultural concept of the gotcha moment, that there are very, very few gotcha moments once you have good questions, right? Once you're asking good questions, there are very, very few. And a lot of the time, the gotcha moment as a concept is just a stand-in for you weren't well informed enough to play the situation correctly, basically. And so I think it's one of these things where it can mask basically just not good intel gathering, and a good intel gathering makes those much less likely.
Yeah,
nice one. You carry on.
So the one thing I've got here is not so much during a game, but during an event in between games. The one thing I know I don't do enough is after you've just lost to someone is that you need to ask them some questions. We all get a bit grumpy after we lose. We don't want to talk to the guy who just wiped us off the table. But you can ask them, what could I have done to alter the scoreline, put you under more pressure? What in my list gave you concerns? What in my gameplay concerns you? What was the biggest risk to your victory? Would turn priority have changed the outcome as well? Is my list too reliant on going first? Is it too reliant on going second?
Yeah.
Is my deployment too reliant on going first or second? Is there ways I can change my deployment or my list in future to sort of counteract that and have a more rounded game? But I think the one guy who's just beat you, he's the best informed to help you improve as a player because he knows how he beat you. He knows what you could have done to stop that happening. So you might even face the same army in the next round. So you think, well, hang on a minute, I might face that army again. How do you think I could have done to better face that? I think everyone at events, or 99% of people at events, would happily sit and talk to you 15-20 minutes after a game just about their list, and they just won, so they're happy to talk about that game.
People love talking about
Warhammer. After he's just won, he's happy to talk about that forever. But
tails wagging.
So I think they're the best informed person to help you out in that moment in time. So you're there for 3 hours. Grab the rest of the time with him and try and help you and inform you ready for your next one. But that's all I got really for during an event or the like.
I think those are the killer things, really. I really do. I think asking the right questions and learning to ask the right questions is massive. I think using the knowledge, and this is the recurring theme from the first section, is that other players make us better. Right, other players make us better players, and every event you play 5 players, and a lot of the time you play better players than you. That's how events work, right? Gradually, eventually, you're going to hit better players than you, and certainly, that's one of the best things about. And so, if you don't use that resource, if you don't use the knowledge of the other person opposite you as much as you're able, and obviously, as we've kind of said, this might not be as easy to access during the game because obviously there's limits to how much. But this does vary. You get people who are very very happy to talk through a lot of how their army plays, right? Even during a game, but especially afterwards. It's a missed opportunity if you're not going to learn from the people that you play games with and can try and get a sense of what you can do against their particular armies more in future. Because it's always hard to learn every army inside out, but when you play against other armies piloted by people who know them inside out is when you're best positioned to get that information. No, definitely. I think those are all really good things. Yeah.
Also, going back to the deployment, I've seen a couple of stream games now with top level players, and they're deploying completely irrespective of what the other guy's doing because they've deployed their armies so many times that they're thinking, I know where my army's going. I don't need to go 1-on-1 with you because I know my game plan. I know what I'm doing. The last couple of units you might just have to hang back and see where they're going to put your big hitters, but 90% of their army is down before they even looked at their opponent. And also that then frees up more time to ask the questions, or while you're putting down, you can ask questions. You don't have to put one down, have a look where he's going, plan your next after that. I think you need to be able to have an idea when you walk up to that table. You've seen the terrain before, you know where your army's going, irrespective of where he's going, because you've already got that turn 1 plan, like Chris said. Is that stop trying to react to all of his drops, because then that's throwing you off what your plan is. Have a first turn plan and stick to that. Rather than letting him trip you up with his deployments, because so many armies now have redeployment that deployment phase is a non-point anyway. It's all mind tricks. Well, don't let him drag you into that. You deploy your army where you're confident that you'll make, have a good game, and not get drawn into that mind game thing.
And I think that's an interesting point, because it's something actually it kind of takes me back to Chris's original point about feeling he had made some errors whilst he was playing the Thousand Suns. I mean, the more things you're trying to remember about your own army during an event, the more room there is for those little mistakes to happen, right? I mean, that's probably, chances are, the reason that in the event itself you made plays you weren't happy with is because you were already trying to remember a ton of additional things that would, with the armies you're experienced with, wouldn't even be there, right? The plan would already be very much embedded. So I think as you say, practicing and bedding in that kind of muscle memory of how your particular army deploys and plays and moves and where it fights and when is really, really good. And that's when you start to free yourself up to focus on the important questions and the important things about what you're playing against, rather than your own stuff. Very good. Okay, right. Well, let's think briefly about improving after the event. What you can do after you've played, after you've been out to wherever you've been. How can you continue your development then? Jamie, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. So I think that my first point here goes back to the communication amongst players, is what we were talking about earlier. Is that, I think most players tend to drive to events with other people, or group up in a car. I think while that event is still fresh in your mind, I think the most important thing there is just talk through your rounds. It doesn't have to talk in great detail about each of your phases, but you think, right, this is what I did here, or your key rounds where you went wrong. I think that this is what I did, and other people have played those armies. They've played, with them or against them, and then they think, well, why didn't you just do that? And you're like, oh. So I think, someone with a broad overview of your army and your matchup will think, well, couldn't you have just done that? And you're like, oh, I was so caught up in the minutiae of the game that I didn't think of that. And I think just throwing ideas around in a car with 2 or 3 of you, there's 2 or 3 players there that have all played the armies. They all know how they work, and I just think some broad overviews will just help highlight things that you may have missed while the stress and the minutiae of the game is just weighing down on you, I think. The second thing is, obviously, once you get home, you start to look into your list. What pulled its weight.
Yes.
There's things you put into your list for certain secondaries. Did they work? Did you play those secondaries? I think a lot of people are adding in retrieve Nachman data units, things for engage. Did you take engage, or did your opponent's army affect that? Well, do I need those in there if I'm not taking engage sort of 4 out of the 5 rounds? Or my big killing units, did they pull their weight? Do I need more buffing units? Things like that. I think we're not critical enough of our list. We come back, we think, oh, we went 3 and 2, what did I mess up? But you don't think, right, each of my units have a breakdown and look, did he pull his weight? Did it do the job? Did they hold primary well enough? Did they achieve certain secondaries that they were put in there for? I think a lot of people were obviously adding in Inquisitors for a little while for psychic interrogation, and then realise that, hang on a minute, I've got one character and he's just going to get sniped out turn 1, and now I can't get psychic interrogation. They're like, do I really need this guy in there? You might lose at turn 1 and risk a 0 on a secondary, then every now and again I may get a 15. So I think it's having a look at your tech choices. I think the bulk of your list sort of picks itself in most cases, but those tech choices you pick, did they pull their weight? Did they do what you wanted them to? If not, was it your fault? Was it the unit's fault, or vice versa? And also, I think having a look at opponents you lost to, the lists you lost to, and see if you can practice against them. I think we've all got a lot of people around us, within the local area, those of us fortunate to, who have most of the codexes in the game. So, say you went against a Death Guard list with Mortarion. Well, I know someone who's got that list. I'll have a couple of practice games against them, see if I play differently, and just run at it a few times to see if there's anything you can do differently. Speak to them and say, what are you scared of? What can I do to beat your list? And just try and close out those matches that were tight or ones you lost, and just see it from their point of view as well. Say, look, how are you worried that I'll beat you? And just things like that. That the going into the event, you probably hadn't really thought about that list, but you come up against it and thought, you know what, I really don't know what to do against this. I don't practice against it enough. Mine was when I came up against demons when I was running my Grey Knights. Didn't know any of their strats, and they can bring back a whole new unit if you kill it against Grey Knights. And I was like, I didn't know this. So now I'm facing him like, well, I don't want to kill anything because he's just going to bring it back next turn. So I'm just sitting there like trying to score primary, thinking, well, do I want to kill anything? Do I not? And so I think after that,
kill it all in one go.
Yeah. So when I was running Grey Knights, I'm like, so I really want to practice against them now, just to learn all those tricks because I'd just never run into them before. So I was just completely taken aback on the day. And so I think that's all I've got for that.
Very interesting. Chris, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think kind of the general reflecting, as Jamie says, is so important, and that starts straight after the game with the questions that you can be asking, as Jamie said, and then talking with other people. I think trying to identify that moment when you lost, because inevitably there probably was that moment where you had to make a decision or two. It is really easy to blame dice. We've all been there. We all will carry on doing it, even though we shouldn't blame dice. We will still blame dice.
I've seen some of the very best players in the world blame their dice.
Because, sometimes dice is quite a contributing factor to the result of the game. Like Jamie,
they do have a say. Yeah. No game was won without them. Exactly.
Jamie and I have played enough Tau Custody games now to know that there are pivotal moments in the game where dice will spike one way or the other, and that may well have a big impact. But a lot of the time it will come down to target priority, or you allowing them to do charges or that sort of thing. I can hark back to that final game with 1,000 Suns into the Imperial Guard, where I went back and I looked through the moves that I made some quite clear moves, and they weren't the right ones. I didn't quite get it right, and those were the clear reasons why I lost that game. So trying to identify the losing moment, I think, is really helpful, because you then hopefully won't make that mistake again. And then finally, when you go back to your list, as we always do, as long as you think you've got the right idea behind it, your next games, you don't want to just try and completely rewrite that list. You want to make small adjustments and see if you can work out the weaknesses. It could be giving yourself another secondary option. That's why I have got the Inquisitor in my list for the Custodes, because he is useful in certain matchups.
Yeah, some games.
And there are some matchups where it's a trap to use him for that secondary, and there's some where you're never going to use him. But then, hey, he's a great model to sit in the backfield. Simple as that. So it's about building in that utility to an extent. But don't go, oh, right, well, this didn't work. I'm now going to drop 700 points of my army and try something else. Well, actually, if you are already in a reasonable place with your list, change 20% of your list.
I think that's a sensible amount to sort of try and limit yourself.
Maybe even like 100, 200 points. Try, just buffing a unit size or something like that. It might well be, the classic thing at the moment is there are a lot of 6-man units flying around, deep striking in for R&D. So that's just something you could try. And then obviously you have to, where am I going to get those points from? What can you drop? What's the most efficient way of doing it? So don't make wholesale changes. I had this tournament where my Doomsday Arcs just rolled ones all the time on their shots. That happened to me a lot, but I knew the general, mathematically, the list worked in 8th, and I kept playing it. Just because you have a bad game. But that's the worst, when people have one bad game. I remember playing my Necron Flying Gunline list in 8th, and I played, and 3 turns in a row, all 3 Doomsday Arcs rolled ones on their shots. So just rolled 9 ones in a row. It would have been so easy to go, right, well, these are going. But, that you have to try and take the ridiculousness out of the situation and just go with those little changes and see if the list works over a period of time, I think.
So is that polling incoming then, Chris, that you're going to be running that Necron gun line?
I think I am, actually.
He is taking it.
Scrivo Bowl.
Yeah, he's taking it to Scrivo Slam, which I think makes him a hero, so that's great.
So I think I haven't worked out yet, but 2 Doom Scythes, 3 Doomsday Arcs, 2 Tesseract Arcs.
The actual, that's amazing. I mean, that's probably actually quite horrible to play against as well, so I quite like that.
I'm hoping it's like go into Lee and go first and just D6 damage him. No,
one.
Yeah, it'd be fun. It'd be fun to try it out again.
Yeah, no, it's going to be good. Yeah, I think you've both touched on the essential things, which I would say. I think there's 2 ways you can go wrong, right? One is you don't examine your own mistakes and shortcomings and how you could improve. I think you do need to, the buck always stops with you. I think if you focus too much on variance or state of the meta or whatever else, you're going to miss the things you can control. I think with the list, as you say, it's interesting because you both kind of have a slightly different take on it, and you're both right, because essentially changing and adapting your list is good. Changing and adapting it too much or in a knee-jerk way is not, because it needs to be very thought out and very justified. And I think interrogating and justifying decisions at each step is good, and that's kind of something we've talked about already. I think that's something you can be doing before, during, and after playing, is why am I doing this or choosing this? What are the pros and cons of this decision? With list revision, that's a big one. Am I just chucking this out because I feel a bit bad because it didn't work in one game? Okay, at least I know that's why I'm doing that, right? You need to have a sort of honest assessment of why, and explain why you're going to drop a unit. I think the most recent example, I rage chucked out the Kellermorph out recently because I was like, I'm done with the flipping Kellermorph. Misses all his shots. He's just another character for Assassinate. He's really annoying. I've never seemed to know where to position him, etc. And the important thing in making that decision, making that swap was, well, can I get, with 80 points, a substantial improvement in my list to its ability to play the mission, to contest primary, because these were things it was struggling to do? And the answer is yes. There's absolutely 80 points in a GC Occult list that you can put into other things that can be doing other jobs and aren't just a sort of what you might call a sort of glory piece, which the Kellermorph is, because ultimately he's cool. He can do some damage. He's a
gunslinging cowboy. What else?
He's a gunslinging cowboy. He's awesome. But his ability to contribute to the crucial scoring elements of the game is actually not as high as some other units might be. So that's how the justification has to be. It doesn't have to be, he's just whiffed this one time, so I'm going to have a sulk. It has to be, can I find a strong, suitable candidate to replace it, and can I justify why I'm doing that?
Yeah.
And as you said, as Chris kind of says, don't revise too much of your list in one go. Don't chuck out the sub-faction. Don't chuck out the army. Don't chuck out this, that, and this. People I know go and start playing the army they lost to immediately after events. it's sort of like, I don't know. That's a limited kind of way of coping with adversity. I think you're going to struggle to bed in and get that knowledge built up if you're just like, I lost that, I'll go and play that now. Excellent. Okay. Well, I think that's our general run through of player development. I hope you guys listening find that useful. Let us know if particular things have worked for you, any tips, tricks that you've got for your own development that we can bear in mind, and I hope that plays out for you well. So we'll be back in a moment with our very next segment, which is I Fought the Law, and the Law won. Boom.
Yeah.
Okay, sponsors, credits rolling, etc. Cigarette.
Sponsored by
do you need a sponsor?
A
quick word from our sponsors is definitely what we need.
Quick word from our sponsors. Yeah, who would sponsor us? Oh, Dense Fence. Dense Fence sponsors us now.
Yeah, get Dense Fence on it.
Dense Fence. Have you got Dense Fence there, Chris? Yes!
You need
as the owner of the Ballistic Skill 4 army, can I just say I'm so glad we used that. That was really good. It was nice. It was
you didn't shoot down the middle one. Oh no, that's what I did.
I didn't shoot down the middle once. Yeah, for a reaon.
Yeah.
Because there was a flipping fence there, and I had to go around instead. But no, good dense terrain is a useful thing to have on your battlefield. So ignore me. Welcome back, listener, to I Fought the Law, and the Law won. And today, our lore head, resident narrative fluffy player Chris, is going to take us through some of his favourite lore. Chris, what lore are you going to talk us through today?
so much favourite lore, so many options.
So many options.
But obviously, there's this army at the moment that are doing quite well called the Harlequins.
Yeah, they're all right.
So I thought, well, last time I did the Custodies, I did like 10 fun facts. Now, as far as I'm aware, there aren't really any fun facts about Harlequins.
Nothing fun.
Not fun facts, no. And there might not be 10 facts either. So you can.
I did try. And I don't know how much the general public knows about Harlequins, apart from the fact that they have the single greatest gunship in the entirety of the 40k universe in the shape of the Void Weaver.
Yeah.
So that's a fact for you. But what I thought I would do is go through their rules and how they link to the fluff.
Okay.
So, as we all know, they have a 4-up invulnerable save in the game. That doesn't come from speed or incredible armor or anything. It comes from their hollow field. And what that hollow field does is with every movement or gesture, their outline explodes into a cloud of multicolour fragments. So that's what makes them really hard to track.
So they're not tanking your shots. Your shots are just missing. They're just hitting colourful versions of something that isn't actually where you thought it was.
Colourful butterflies.
Re-rolling that 4-up invulnerable with the lucky dice. It's just
double checking whether you hit one of the mirror images.
They couldn't quite work out on the armor. Now their flip belt, obviously, so that's that enables them to go over basically everything, and that is simply an anti-gravity belt. So they flick that on with their mind, and then that means that they can just go really light and they can go huge heights, etc. And then what I also wanted to mention was their weapons. So, as we all know, they have 3 types of weapons, which no one knows which one is which because they all look so different. They've got silly names.
Kiss is the long one. I know that much.
The Kiss is the long one. You are right. So, that's the long tube, and what happens is they punch forward, and then a monofilament wire fires out 100 meters of it, apparently.
Like a hummingbird's tongue.
It goes through, and then it just whips itself all around and turns your insides to mush.
Yeah. They floss all of you at once with a bit of metal, basically. And that is quite incredible.
And that's why it's mortal wounds in the game. The strategy gives you mortal wounds. So then we've got the caress, which is the hand. So
this is pretty cool. Yeah.
And this has a phase field. They turn the phase field on, and then it just bypasses the armor. So the hand is there, and boom, it's inside the person they're fighting, and they can just crush and take out your heart.
Yeah, it's pretty epic.
And that's why the stratagem is no invuln in the game, because it just goes straight
through. Bypassing your very defenses.
Absolutely. And then the third combat weapon is the embrace, which is the kind of like the lump on the arm. It's neither here nor there. And again, that's firing out the monofilament wire, and that's as they charge, it kind of sends out this big net, which then comes together and slices up your opponent, which is why in game that does mortals on a 4-up on the charge as a stratagem. Because it's just before combat is joined, they fire this thing out. And in terms of the guns, there's one gun I wanted to mention, which is the Neuro Disruptor, which is obviously
one of my favourites,
which no one was ever using, and now suddenly it's got
badass.
Decent.
It's badass.
So this gun has no internal workings. It's got no trigger. It's got no power source. It simply works by the intent of the user. And so you think it, and it happens. And what it does is fires waves of particles that disrupt the brain's neural pathways. So that is why it's a mortal wound, and that's why it bypasses the armor, because it's not having anything to do with the armor. It's just messing with the brain.
It's a very cool looking gun too, with the little prismatic kind of barrel end.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Run 2 in every squad. You just never not useful.
Prismatic. People start.
He's not giving us any Void Weaver fluff.
no.
There's no fluff for that.
No, there's no fluff. It's just ridiculous.
This is just a Star Weaver with a gun on it.
We only care about the troops here. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the lore.
Those are very cool. I think the Harlequin weapons are among the coolest, and I love the lore on the weapons. And actually, as you say, it actually does map up to the rules very, very nicely. And in a distant future, when people have forgiven Harlequins, I'm sure they'll be able to appreciate once again how awesome they are, because they are a very cool army and they deserve nice things, just maybe not as many nice things as they're currently accumulating.
Slightly too many nice things. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that, Chris. That was excellent. So we're now going to move over to just the tip, and I have a tip for you today. It's not a big tip.
It does the job though, Tom. That's what I've heard.
Yeah, it's a tip that concerns the numbers
Inches.
1 to 12, and variance on that scale. And it's about charges and charge probability. Now, I think math hammering games and mapping probability in games is something that different players like to do to different amounts. And I think there's some people who really like to have a statistical grasp on like every conceivable outcome in the game. I don't know that that's the case for all players or for your average player, but I think charges are an easy area of the game where you, as a player, can enhance your game by knowing the sort of basics of how likely particular charge distances are to happen. And the reasons for this are simple. If you fail your charge, you've got a unit stuck like a lemon ready to get hurt by something else. So failed charges really hurt you in the game. They're generally a bad use of resources, but equally important, there are also within different armies ways to boost or negate charges, and understanding just how bad an effect those have on your plan and knowing how much you'll need to do to get around them is also really useful. So I'm going to talk through a couple of the very basics just to indicate what I mean, right? And the first one we're going to start with is the 9-inch charge. And got a probability chart, which I'm consulting, and I'll get Chris to put a similar version up in just a moment. But essentially,
it's 90% chance of success, right? Not so much.
No, Chris, you will find it is not. It is not that likely at all.
Really not.
And so that's where you need to be very careful. So a 9-inch charge is approximately 28% likely to happen.
That's like 1 in 4.
That's very unlikely. And you might recognize 9 inches as the distance that most things in 40k are allowed to deep strike away from stuff. So if your game plan in 40k involves deep striking 9 inches away and then making a charge, it is not a good game plan. So that is a very useful thing to bear in mind. And that is why a lot of the best melee armies have +1 to charge, because those odds massively improve, right? If you get an 8-inch charge, the odds improve to just over 40%. And well into the realms of 60+% with a reroll. And it's worth saying rerolls obviously add a bit to your percentage, right? They slightly improve your odds of getting what you want. So for an army with a +1 to charge, or an army that deep strikes 8 inches away, like ones I like, then your odds are actually straying into the realm of reasonable for making those kinds of charges, right? And so that's a big one. I think that's a really important thing to bear in mind. And where this is particularly useful is where things like +2 to charge or -2 to charge come in, is they have an enormously damaging effect on your odds of making charges. So it's worth having a look at the distances here. And anything that's pushing you up beyond 7, 8, 9 for your charge distance is pushing you into high risk of failure territory, right? So it's very important when you're charging at something where you know they have the ability to, let's say that you're fighting the inexorable Death Guard, they have the ability to make your charge -2. Tau have various -2s. Tanglefoot grenades can add negatives as well.
Oh, yeah.
Anything like that, unless you're coming in from and charging from like 3 inches away, you're straying into very real territory of risking failure and risking being caught out. Likewise, you know that if you have a +2 in your army somewhere, so let's say a chaplain, then you are very much able to push your charges down to very, very achievable distances. And so having a sense of those probabilities in your head and trying to make sure that you aren't attempting charges from more than, I'd say, 5 or 6 away most of the time if you can control it, you're going to avoid hitting that horrible charge phase where you've got several charges that need to happen, and let's say you fail the first one you attempt. Now you're in very dicey territory, right? Because even if you re-roll that one, you're now hoping and praying that every single charge you have goes off effectively. So that's something I say. We'll have the chart up on the page. I think that's a really useful one to have in mind. And this isn't to say never attempt big charges, because sometimes you have to. Sometimes you've got to take a Hail Mary. And there's obviously things you can do to mitigate the risk, like, I'm going to charge, but I'm going to put myself behind this wall. So even if I do fail the charge, I'm behind a wall. I'm not immediately getting shot. I'm not immediately getting blasted. But knowing how likely that is to succeed, and then knowing what tricks and tools you have, be that stratagems, buffs, auras to boost charges or improve your odds, making delivery more reliable is very key, I think, to building a good game plan. If you are a good player, by which I mean one that likes melee, because melee is the best way to play the game. Sorry, Jamie, but
That's
melee
right,
is
I'm
the
officially
truth.
a Blood Angels
You're
player
playing
now.
Blood Angels now, so yeah, you'll be like, guns? What guns? What? I got like 7 bolters.
If it hit a pistol, I'm not concerned.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. Anything to add, gents, before we wrap up?
No.
No, I think that's. I think it's really important that you don't base your entire game plan on the success of charges, especially once you get to like 7-inch and beyond. It's also really important, like, you set yourself up for 3, 7, 8-inch charges. Like, try and prioritize what order to do those in. Because obviously,
that's actually a really nice thing.
Like, those are some really tricky things, and if you're going to set yourself up with 3, 7, or 8-inch charges, there's a pretty decent possibility you could fail all 3. And if you lose the game because of that, then you did not play that game right. And if you then finish your game and say, "Oh, I lost because I failed my 3 charges," that's on you. That's not on the dice. So I think those sorts of things are.
And that can be the difference between sticking something out on a limb turn 1, where the charge is longer, and waiting a turn for when things are going to be better. Right, stuff's going to be closer, the odds are going to be better. So I think it can make a massive difference. Overstretching when there's actually, your odds of actually making the charge are quite limited. Can be really, really risky. Yeah, I think that's a really good one to put. And I think during your charge phase, identifying where the most risky ones are, and I guess also where the most important ones are.
Yeah,
and making sure you do those knowing that you're only going to get 1 reroll unless you're like a sub faction that's specifically geared for rerolling or something like that. Knowing that and playing your charge phase very carefully, I think will definitely help to reduce catastrophic failure. That's what we're all trying to do. Wonderful. Okay. Well, we've been the Plus. We've had a very good time nattering about stuff we love. So all that remains is for us to say goodbye, and we'll see you after the teams event to let you know how our brave heroes got on in the bear pit that is current competitive 40k. See you next time. Bye-bye.
See you later.
Bye now.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.